It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome to I Talk to Ghosts. I'm your resident medium, Jennifer, and I welcome you into my spirit parlor. Come on in. I saved you your favorite seat. So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's have an intriguing conversation. I love discussing topics that leave us pondering and wanting to discuss more. So let's discuss a topic that quietly sits beneath philosophy, spirituality, science, and even magic. What if consciousness isn't something that only happens inside human brains? What if awareness exists everywhere? In animals, in plants, in fungi, and maybe even in things we usually call inanimate. This isn't about proving anything beyond doubt. It's about exploring an idea that keeps resurfacing across cultures, centuries, and disciplines. The idea that consciousness may be a fundamental feature of reality itself. Before we go any further, let's define our terms. When we say consciousness, we're not just talking about human self-awareness, inner dialogue, or personality. In philosophy and consciousness studies, consciousness often means something much simpler and more mysterious. The capacity to have experience at all. Not intelligence, not reasoning, not language, just experience. The feeling of being something rather than nothing. This distinction matters because once consciousness is defined this way, the question changes from who is intelligent to who or what might experience reality in any form. Long before neuroscience, many spiritual traditions assumed consciousness was not rare, it was pervasive. Animistic worldviews found in indigenous cultures across the globe understand that animals, plants, rivers, stones, and landscapes are beings with presence and agency, not inert matter. In Hindu philosophy, the concept of Brahman points to a universal consciousness underlying all existence, while Atman represents the individual expression of that same awareness. Buddhism, particularly in its early forms, often treats consciousness as a process rather than a possession, something that arises everywhere conditions allow. These traditions didn't ask, is this consciousness? They asked, how does consciousness express itself here? That framing is surprisingly close to some modern philosophical ideas. Because in contemporary philosophy, the idea that consciousness exists everywhere has a name: panpsychism. Panpsychism proposes that consciousness is not something that suddenly appears when matter gets complicated enough. It's something that exists at the most basic level of reality. One of the earliest modern thinkers to seriously develop this idea was Alfred North Whitehead, whose work, Process and Reality, suggests that all entities have some degree of experience, however faint. More recently, philosopher Philip Goff brought panpsychism back into the mainstream discussion with his book, Galileo's Error. Goff argues that modern science, inspired by Galileo, deliberately removed subjective experience from its description of reality in order to study matter mathematically. Physics tells us how matter behaves, but not what it is. Consciousness, he suggests, may be the missing piece. Now this brings us to something known as the hard problem of consciousness, a term popularized by David Chalmers. The hard problem asks, why does physical matter give rise to subjective experience at all? We can explain how neurons fire, we can map brain regions, but none of that explains why those processes feel like something from the inside. Panpsychism responds by saying, consciousness doesn't emerge from matter. Matter is already infused with proto-consciousness. Do we all need to pause and take a break here just to absorb all of these concepts? Sometimes when I think about these things, I go into a tailspin. But it's so wonderful and fascinating. It makes me feel like I'm such a small magical thing in this grander magical theater. Okay, let me back up. So none of these processes that we can map explains the why those processes feel like something from the inside. Panpsychism responds by saying consciousness doesn't emerge from matter. Matter is already infused with proto-consciousness. And from this view, human awareness isn't created from nothing. It's organized, amplified, and refined. Now, when we apply these ideas to animals, things get less controversial. Most people already accept that animals have some form of consciousness. The debate is usually about what degree. Philosopher Thomas Nagel famously explored this in his essay, What Is It Like to Be a Bat? Nagel argued that no matter how much we study a bat's brain, we can never fully know what it's like to be a bat. This introduced the idea that subjective experience is irreducible, that every conscious being inhabits its own internal world. And if that's true, the line between human and non-human awareness becomes thinner. But then plants complicate things even further. They don't have brains, yet they respond to their environment in sophisticated ways. The controversial but influential book, The Secret Life of Plants, by Peter Tompkins and Christopher Bird, explored experiments suggesting plants react to emotional intention and environmental change. As a quick side note here, The Secret Life of Plants was covered in a past podcast of mine called Odd Tonic with my partner Maxwell. That episode is still live and online, so if you want to look up Odd Tonic and find The Secret Life of Plants, we go into this work quite a bit in detail because it is fascinating. And while some of their studies were debated, modern plant science has confirmed that plants communicate chemically, they respond to sound and vibration, they remember stress, and they alter behavior based on past experience. Whether we call this intelligence or proto-awareness, it challenges the idea that consciousness requires a human nervous system. Then there is fungi. Mycelia networks act like underground information superhighways, connecting forests, redistributing nutrients, and responding dynamically to threats. Mycologist Paul Stamets, in his book Mycelium Running, describes fungi as adaptive, communicative, and astonishingly responsive systems. Fungi don't think like humans, but they sense, they adjust, and they interact. In a panpsychism framework, Fungi may represent a form of distributed consciousness, not centralized, but networked. And let's talk about inanimate objects and proto-consciousness. This is where the idea often meets resistance. Are rocks aware? Is a chair aware? Panpsychism doesn't suggest that objects think or feel emotions. Instead, it proposes that the building blocks of matter possess extremely minimal forms of experience. Think of it not as awareness, but as interiority. What is it like to be that thing, even if unimaginably faint? Some philosophers describe this as proto-consciousness. From this view, consciousness scales with complexity. Humans don't have consciousness because we're special. We have it because we're organized in a way that allows it to flourish. Some modern theories attempt to bridge science and consciousness. One example is integrated information theory, which proposes that consciousness corresponds to how integrated information is within a system. Under this theory, any system that integrates information, even minimally, may possess some degree of experience. This doesn't mean everything is conscious in the way humans are. It means consciousness may be graded, layered, and everywhere. And why does this idea matter? If consciousness is fundamental, then the universe isn't a dead machine. It's a living process. This perspective subtly reshapes how we relate to the world. Nature becomes participant, not a backdrop. Matter becomes expressive, not inert. And awareness becomes something we share, not something we own. And spiritually, it echoes something ancient, that reality itself may be awake, exploring itself through countless forms. So the question isn't really, is everything conscious? The deeper question may be, how does consciousness express itself through different forms of being? Maybe humans aren't the exception, just one voice in a much larger, listening, reacting, being universe. So that's something to think about. I love discussions like this because they springboard into something else and it just moves you. And I love experiencing that. And I love sharing topics like this with you. Let me know what you think about consciousness. Thank you for spending this time with me in the Spirit Parlor this evening. If you're interested in topic reminders for this episode, you can visit my Patreon for a downloadable printable, and all of my accompanying offerings for my podcast are available for $1 a month. You can visit patreon.com/italktoghosts. Thank you for supporting the podcast and my work. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and don't forget, you're not alone in your awareness. We really are all in this together. Take care.
Hey there, I'm Susie and I'm the host of Beyond the Ferns podcast. Each week, I take you beyond the headlines into the stories that linger long after the news fades. From chilling true crime and unsolved cold cases, to paranormal encounters, cults, and extraordinary survival stories. It's a little bit of everything for everyone. Whether you're drawn to mysteries, fascinated by the strange and unexplained, or simply love a good story, I focus on the truth, the details, and above all, justice for the victims and survivors. So buckle up. Things are about to get a little scary. Follow Beyond the Ferns wherever you get your podcast. Thanks, y'all.